And we are live. Hello, my name's James Watling and welcome to PEEP Magazine Live, our first studio production, coming to you from the centre of Newcastle City Centre. Very proud and privileged to be here tonight. PEEP Magazine is an online combat subscription service. We have boxing, we have kickboxing, we cover mixed martial arts. You can follow us on Instagram, you can subscribe to us at YouTube, and you can follow us and tweet to us at Twitter. Tonight is an introductory show, so bear with us if there's any, if we lose our live service, if things fall from the roof or any stray dogs wander into the studio, we'll work around anything that happens. But we appreciate you watching and viewing. Please comment. Please feel free to like or dislike if you prefer. We prefer likes. And to give you an idea of what we're going to be doing on the upcoming series, as I said, we are a combat channel. We do cover the majority of the combat sports, predominantly, as I said, boxing, kickboxing, mixed martial arts. Tonight's show will be focusing specifically on boxing. We have some coverage on the upcoming Lewis Ritson versus Robbie Barrett British title fight, which will be on the 7th of October at Manchester Arena. We'll also be focusing on Ricky Burns versus Anthony Crolla, which I believe is a lightweight fight, a lightweight event, not for any current title. And we'll also be covering Chris Eubanks, or talking a little bit rather on Chris Eubank versus, I believe, Nice Yildirim, which is on the Super 8 tournament, which I'm quite excited about, actually. I only found that out today. Only received the information on that today. I had no idea that they were launching a Super 8 tournament, which I'm very interested in, because I remember watching the Super 6 tournament back when we had, obviously, our own Carl Froch, and we had... we had, actually, which is something else we're going to talk about tonight, which is Andre Ward, who was also fighting on the Super 6 tournament. He won it. He actually announced his retirement recently, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. Arthur Abraham, which is ironically or coincidentally a Chris Eubank Jr. former opponent. He fought on the original Super 6. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, as I say, specifying on boxing. But we'll be covering other items in the upcoming casts, podcasts, and streams. We'll be looking at some streetwear and equipment, which I'm equally excited about. Different types of clothing, not just for fighters and for training equipment, but also streetwear, hence the name, streetwear. Running shoes, trainers. We're going to be looking at boxing equipment, boxing gloves, focus mitts, punch bags, kick shields. Those watch I'm also quite interested in is the kind of the boxing. Some people actually use the swimming. For swimming, you have those, I think they're called noodles, that you just wrap around your body and you can swim, like swimming aids. And some boxers use those just for speed and for timing. My boxing coach, Baz Jones from the Manor, he's talked about buying some of those. I'm starting to use them, incorporate them into our workout. So rather than just using focus mitts, you have these kind of batons that you use. And rather than throwing power shots, it's all about speed and timing and accuracy and defense. So something like that we can talk about as well. And that's something that I'll be using. And I like to bring onto the show and talk a little bit about the benefits of using that, and perhaps the disadvantages of using that equipment too. So as well as that, we're also going to have a section called The Coach, which I believe will be a personal favourite of mine. What we're going to do is bring in coaches from around the Northeast, not just from boxing and kickboxing and mixed martial arts, although we'll certainly have those coaches on too, but from other sports such as basketball, surfing, football, rugby, perhaps even golf. And the idea with the coach is to bring these guys on and to talk to them about how they got into the sport. Perhaps they competed in the past and decided to move on to coaching instead for whatever reason, perhaps through injury, perhaps through not reaching the heights they wanted to reach competitively, but would rather coach and bring other people on into succeeding in that sport. A little bit about their coaching techniques, how they differ perhaps from other coaches. Have they gone through a degree, for example, in sports science and sports exercise? Have they just picked things up on their own, just from being in gyms, being around training grounds? They've done their own self-study, etc., etc. So I think that'll be really interesting. And for me personally, and obviously it's what you guys want to see. I think bringing the coaches in from other sports, not just from the combat sports, will be beneficial for us all, because we can see if there's any perhaps crossover, such as track and field athletes coming across. What can we use from there? And from a sports psychology perspective, what do they use differently? What do we use that again we could perhaps give to them, they could take from us, etc. And is there any cohesion between the way athletes think? I personally think that there is. When you compete in any event, whether it's boxing, whether it's surfing, whether it's basketball, whether it's mixed martial arts, whether it's wrestling or golf or Formula One, I think all athletes have certain characteristics that would carry through to any sport. So how we can develop those and bring them into our sports, I think will be really interesting. So the coach is something, as I say, I'm very excited about, and hopefully you will be too. Nutrition and supplement slot, that's going to be another regular item we're going to have on PEEP Magazine Live. We're going to talk about different types of nutrition plans, or what people call diets. I prefer to say nutrition, simply because when you say diet, to me that constitutes a lack, whereas nutrition is a bit more of a positive word, and from a psychological perspective, you're more likely to stick and respond to that. So different types of nutrition plans athletes can use to gain strength, to increase recovery, potentially reduce muscle soreness, to maintain weight or to cut weight, which is something I want to talk a little bit. In fact, I'm going to talk about it right now. The idea of cutting weight isn't something that I'm massively on board with. I personally think that you should stay within a certain percentage of your fight weight. And if you're losing tremendous amounts of weight, such as water cutting, where athletes can lose 30 pounds plus the week leading up to the fight, I believe that to be dangerous. I think it's proven to be so. And certainly from a athletic performance or a sports performance perspective, it's not going to play well, especially in boxing and a contact sport, for your actual performance and the speed, etc., that you can generate in power and strength. Oh yes, I'm just getting some off-camera cues there, just to say thank you to Joe for watching. I think we've had our first like and comment. So this is an interactive show, so you're very welcome to comment and like at any point. And a big thanks to Linda as well. I don't have this running up on the screen. I've got Cliff Sainsbury, who's my co-conspirator and the CEO and creator of PEEP Magazine, who is overseeing tonight's show on camera, on the music system, on the Mac, on the sound system. So performing many tasks tonight. Also, actually, if you have anything that you'd like to discuss specifically, we can bring things up. We can Google things and have an open discussion. That's the whole point of tonight. It's just to draw in as many people as possible that have interest in these sports, and as I say, have an open dialogue about the types of things that we want to cover. Supplements, that's something else. Sports supplements. I personally have a great amount of interest in and experience with. Protein powders, pre-workouts, recovery formulas, etc., etc. So I work with a company called APN, Applied Performance Nutrition, which is a local nutrition company. I'll be bringing on some of their products from obviously many different companies, SciTech perhaps, PhD, perhaps Ronnie Coleman. I'm just throwing some out there. We'll bring on some BCAA powders. We'll try different formulas. We'll trial them out. We'll talk about them for taste, for effectiveness, for overall use. It'll be very interesting, I think, because sports nutrition, there's a lot of information out there. But what will be interesting is to bring these products onto the show, to try them out, to talk a little bit about them, let you know what we found, and perhaps give them to some of the athletes that we have on the show, and let them try them and come back and give us a bit of feedback, either positive or negative, and you can then take that away and apply it to your own training. My athletic background was predominantly in the striking arts, kickboxing, Muay Thai, boxing. I've also practiced Gracie Jiu-Jitsu under David Elliott, who's a local, I believe, second degree black belt, an incredible Gracie Jiu-Jitsu coach, trainer, and former fighter. I've also trained in judo, in Wing Chun, praying mantis, kung fu, Shotokan, karate, Wado-ryu, different experience in different martial arts. I'm very interested in resistance training, weight training, strength and conditioning, track conditioning, as I say, a background in nutrition and sports supplements, and I've competed at a high level, at world-class level as an amateur and as a professional. I'd actually retired for 6 years and recently came back onto the pro scene and won my comeback fight. So we'll see where we go from there. A little bit on my background. I also have a training ethos and brand called Team Alpha. Team Alpha is a combination of martial arts, strength and conditioning, fitness conditioning, track conditioning, nutrition, supplementation, emotional development, sports psychology, and I work in usually a one-to-one format. Working with individuals, helping them to attain their athletic goals, their fitness goals, their health goals. I work with professional sports teams and sports athletes as well. We have a clothing brand. We work with APN supplements. If you'd like to follow us for more information and inspirational videos and images and stories, you can find us on Instagram at Team Alpha 1424, and any of your own training videos, images, inspirational stories that you would like to share with us, you can hashtag us in at Be More Alpha. So once again, hashtag Be More Alpha. Please send your images, training stories, training methods, any information you'd like to share with us. We'd love to see some of that, and we'll certainly comment and like on those too. So that's a little bit about myself, a little bit about PEEP Magazine, a little bit about what we're going to be doing. Just as a competition that we have, actually, which I'd like to fit in now before I forget. You may have noticed, if you do subscribe to us on YouTube, that we had a small homage to Blade Runner. For those over 30 or 30 plus, you may remember, and hopefully it's reached a new age of film goers. Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, a classic. Actually, it was a flop, directed by oh my god, why have I forgotten the director's name? It's going to come to me very soon, because he also directed
Ridley Scott.
Thank you, Gladiator, Ridley Scott, and Aliens, and Alien Resurrection. I don't know, thank you for the off-camera prop there. Yes, Ridley Scott, the great Ridley Scott. If Ridley Scott is watching live right now, I do apologise. Take that dislike off you've just given us and turn it back to a like, please, Mr. Scott. I do apologise for forgetting your name. The great Blade Runner. There is a new Blade Runner coming out shortly called Blade Runner 2049. So who knows, in the future we may even do some small film reviews, which I'll be very keen to do. Certainly films that are relevant to the combat sports. I'd spoken a little bit with Cliff to say that I'd started to run Southpaw again. Actually, I was watching that again this morning with Jake Gyllenhaal, a fantastic film. I watched it with my daughter, actually, Kiana, when it first came out, and we were both blown away by it. One of my favorite boxing films, fight films. I think Southpaw and with Joel Edgerton and what was it called? Cliff, you're gonna have to help me out. It was a mixed martial arts movie with Joel Edgerton and was it Thomas Hardy? It was a viewers. If you're watching right now, can you just throw that up on the comments? What was it? It's not The Fighter. That was a Christian Bale boxing movie. The mixed martial arts movie with Joel Edgerton. We can't remember what it is, but it will come to me when it does. I'll make sure I say a Warrior. I think it was Warrior, actually. Warrior. We were just about to Google that. We don't need to. I'm sure it's Warrior. Well, they're my two favorite combat films, Warrior and Southpaw, assuming it is called Warrior. And the reason for me that they were so engrossing was not the fight scenes, because I think it's fair to say in any combat film or any Hollywood produced film about combat sports, the fight scenes are never ever going to be actual Andrew Barton. I'd like to say Barton. I do apologize. That's two viewers I've managed to upset, Andrew Barton and Ridley Scott, so I apologise to them both. Andrew Barton, thank you for watching this live.
He says the film's called Fighter.
Right, actually, is it? Well, Fighter correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, Fighter is a Christian Bale boxing movie. The one that I'm referring to is with Joel Edgerton and the chap who plays Bane, who all the girls like. What's he called? What's the actor called? I think I just threw his name up and it's escaped me. And it's a mixed martial arts movie, and they play brothers, and they're two brothers in it, and one comes back from being in the Marines, the US Marines. They end up fighting each other, on no spoilers. I think it's Warrior. I'm not 100%. Anyway.
What Warrior?
Is it Warrior? I think Andrew's gonna. Maybe that's something we can Google.
I don't know. He's calling somebody Jim. I don't know who Jim is.
Right. No worries. That's fine. Point being.
There's no one called Jim.
That's fine. It's James. But that's absolutely fine. Point being is the reason that I thought those two films stood out so much. Was not the fight scenes, but the production value. Not just production value, but the script, the storyline, the way it was, the tremendous gravitas of the actors and the emotionality that they brought into it. Because that's what I was saying. In any Hollywood-produced movie, the fight scenes are never going to be, quote unquote realistic. And I personally think that if you want realistic fight scenes, you would just go and watch a fight. Southpaw, however. The fight scenes on those were, I think, probably some of the best that I've seen on screen. But, it was a little bit over-dramatized. That's always going to happen in a movie. But they're two films I'd definitely recommend that you see. And if anything like that is to be released again, we can, we could look to do small reviews on those. Anyway, coming back onto tonight's show, we kind of got distracted there. So there's lots to offer from PEEP Magazine Live. Once again, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram. You could follow PEEP on Twitter. Please feel free to tweet, to make any comments, to give any comments you would like to on tonight's stream and any future streams. So, getting into the bones of tonight's show, I have some notes with me. We're going to talk on boxing. I think I did mention before that boxing will be the main focus of tonight's show. And we have 3 upcoming fights we're going to discuss and one we'll call a news flash. Okay. Just before we do that, something else that I just kind of glossed over. We have a competition for tonight. And the competition winner will receive a PEEP Magazine t-shirt in large, and they will also receive an APN protein powder. I did joke before that you would also receive a brand new Mac as provided by PEEP Magazine, but that is a joke. You cannot quote us on that. That is just for fun. So, PEEP Magazine t-shirt, APN protein powder, and here is the competition. Can anybody spot the iconic photographic reference on the feed live right now? So it's a photographic reference to an iconic, event or incidents that happened in 1931. And that's all the clue I can give you. So once again, the winner will receive a PEEP Magazine t-shirt in large and an APN protein powder, Lean Pro protein powder. And the question is, can anybody spot the photographic reference of an iconic event or incident, I shall call it? And it happened in 1931. You don't need to write your answers down on a postcard and send them in. You can simply tweet your answers to us or write them onto the YouTube feed, and the winner will be announced if we have a winner live tonight. If not, we will be sure to tweet you back and send your prize to us. You would then DM to us, direct messages with your name and obviously your address, and we'll send those out to you. Not a problem whatsoever. So that is the competition. Right then, let's now look at some of the current events that are happening. I think I mentioned before, we have Lewis Ritson versus Robbie Barrett for the prestigious Lonsdale belt, a British title. That's on the 7th of October at the Manchester Arena. We've actually had Lewis on the show several times. We had what I believe was called the Blood Brothers series on PEEP magazine. If you haven't watched that, you might want to go onto the PEEP channel on YouTube and just scroll down the thumbnails and look for Blood Brothers with Lewis Ritson, and a fascinating documentary about his sparring and training and his mentality leading up to this British title fight. A successful fighter with an incredible record. I'm just going to bring up some details right now. I actually spoke with Lewis and his father, David, a few weeks ago. I interviewed them both at the Baltic Contemporary Centre of Art in Newcastle. Being in the centre of Newcastle right now, we will be involving and including some of the iconic scenery and settings around Newcastle as part of what we do. We're a big supporter of Newcastle upon Tyne, not just the fight shows that happen within it, but Newcastle itself. And I'd like to send us a special shout out and thank you to the Baltic for making us such welcome guests, allowing us to set up all our camera equipment. It's a beautiful place to go to and to view. They've got some fun. Even if contemporary art isn't your thing, 'cause it isn't massively my thing, it's a fantastic place to go and to see. Not just for the building, but for the art that's contained within. Go and have a look. Perhaps art isn't your thing, full stop. But I think it's worth going along, having a look, perhaps, giving your point of view, and you never know, you might come around and actually start to enjoy it. I think at the moment they have a competition between, I believe, 5 artists who have their kind of displays, for want of a better word. The art critics out there, correct me on the correct name for that, rather than displays, on the 5 levels, and you can actually vote for which artists' works you prefer. So it's quite an interesting way of doing things. So certainly get over to the Baltic Centre of Art, pop across the little bridge, get yourself a coffee, something to eat, and go and check out some contemporary art. Why not? And if you want to, have a little moseying up to the Baltic and go watch a show. So we do support the arts, and we certainly support Newcastle upon Tyne here at PEEP magazine. So I spoke with Lewis one-to-one. I asked him some questions about his training, about how he feels about his opponent, about his upcoming fight, his future projections for his career. A lovely, lovely guy, actually. As soon as I clocked him as he came into the Baltic, myself and Cliff were waiting for Lewis and for David. Absolute gentleman, lovely guy, really positive outlook, and a great ambassador for the sport of boxing. We will be there on the 7th of October to watch him challenge for the I believe it's a vacant belt. Cliff, is that correct? I believe it's a vacant Lonsdale belt against... Yep.
Robbie Barrett's actually the
British... He's a British champion. Well, there you go. I do apologise to Robbie Barrett. That's 3 people I've managed to offend on our first show, so that's not a problem. I am kidding. So Lewis Riston versus Robbie Barrett for the prestigious Lonsdale belt, the British lightweight title. We'll be there live, not to cover the event, but we'll be there to support Lewis and to report on the show as it happens. So after speaking to Lewis, I mean, he seems very prepared. He needs to be. It's going to be a 12 3-minute battle. Lewis's style, I watched some of his sparring actually, and after I talked to him, I'd only seen the sparring that I'd watched in the production of the Blood Brothers, and very aggressive sparring, very kind of come forward, but he's a very sleek operator, and he tells me that he tends to move his sparring around, so sometimes you'll spar aggressively, working on strength and power and aggression and work rate. And then on other times he spars, he tends to work on footwork, on defense, on movement, on speed. So he likes to mix it up. So if you'd like to support Lewis, I believe the tickets for the event are sold out, although it may be worth checking online to see if you can get there live. If not, then do follow the event. And you can also follow Lewis, the Sandman Ritson, on Facebook, if you'd like to follow him on Facebook and keep up with the events. The show itself, the fights start, I believe, at 6 o'clock. It's billed from 6 until 10:30, although these things do tend to go on a little bit longer at the Manchester Arena. And that'll be an interesting event for the Northeast. If I'm confident that Lewis can can bring the title home, and it will be not so much a coup, but certainly it'll certainly be a proud moment for the Northeast and Northeast boxing in particular. So Lewis the Sandman Ritson, who will be boxing for the Lonsdale belt on the 7th of October. So that will be something to watch. Right then, on the same show, I'm just going to go back to my notes now. We also have... Oh, I do apologize. Slight glitch. I did promise you some glitches tonight. I don't have them on here, they're just on my notes. So top of the bill will be Ricky Burns versus Anthony Crolla. I mentioned before it would be a lightweight battle. Ricky Burns I know a little bit about, an Edinburgh, a Glasgow-based fighter, I believe. Ricky Burns, I've seen him fight a couple of times. I was actually invited, or is he Edinburgh-based? I do apologise. I was invited to a fight in the centre of Glasgow, and unfortunately I couldn't make it. I think actually I'd turned the tickets down because something else was happening, and then subsequently after that I'd watched Ricky Burns some of his highlights on YouTube, and I was so impressed with his movement, how slick he was, and a fantastic technical fight. I don't believe he carries a lot of power, although he did manage to stop on that very fight his opponent, who was a tough domestic fighter. Again, the name escapes me. With it being our first show, we didn't get a lot of prep time. So he's fighting Anthony Crolla, who comes back after injury outside the ring. I don't want to go into too much detail of that, but I believe he was assaulted, and thankfully he is back into action now, back into the professional ring. So that should be an interesting fight. And that's top of the bill on the 7th of October, Manchester Arena, Ricky Burns versus Anthony Crolla. So that's another reason to be there on the night, to support Lewis. 7th, did I say the 7th of October? I think I said the 7th. Yeah, 7th of October at the Manchester Arena. And we have Lewis Ritson. I need all the off-camera prompts I can get right now. That's not a problem at all, or not a problem whatsoever. So that should be an interesting show. Right, next up on the list of tonight's content, which before I go on to, again, I will highlight our competition we have tonight. You can win your very own PEEP magazine t-shirt, which you may be able to see in the background. PEEP magazine t-shirt in large, although if you do have a size preference, we may be able to meet your needs. And an APN Lean Pro protein powder. And the question is this. Can anybody spot the photographic reference that will be coming up in shot of the iconic event or incident? And the only clue I can give you is the year when it happened, which was 1931. 1931. And that's the only clue I can give you. So the first person to tweet us or inbox us with the correct answer, not just the inboxers or tweeters randomly with the correct answer, will win the PEEP magazine t-shirt, the APN protein powder, and all you will need to do is to direct message us your details and your address, and we will have those sent out for you. And that'll be our first winner on the very first PEEP magazine live stream. Very happy to be here, coming to you from the centre of Newcastle. PEEP magazine, as we said, we're covering combat sports, we're covering boxing, we're covering K1, kickboxing, covering mixed martial arts. We will have sections coming up on streetwear equipment. We'll be having a section on the coach, which will be various coaches coming in to talk to us. Nutrition and supplement slot, discussing different types of nutrition, different types of nutrition plans, different types of foods that can be a benefit to athletes all over, and different types of supplements. Okay, let's move on to our next little slot. So we have Chris Eubank, who will be competing against Nice Yildirim, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, on the Super 8 tournament, which is interesting to me. I'd mentioned before about the Super 6 tournament, which we had back in, I think it was the mid-2000s, the winner of which was Andre Ward, and we had our own Carl Froch, fantastic fighter, incredible super middleweight fighter. Ironically, when I first heard of Carl Froch, I think he was a British champion at super middleweight. And it was during the time when Joe Calzaghe was active, and Joe Calzaghe was at the time one of my all-time favorite fighters. So, and he was calling out Eubank quite consistently. And then Calzaghe retired. And then Froch really showed how great he was during the Super 6 tournament, boxing his way to the final. I can't remember which fight. I think he'd lost to one because it was a point-based system. When you were winning, you get points for wins, for draws and losses. He'd lost against an opponent. I don't have the information in front of me, but he'd made his way to the final against Andre Ward. He was outboxed in the final by Andre Ward. That's what Andre Ward does, and that's why he's an undefeated fighter. We're going to talk about him in a second. But I was very impressed with Carl Froch, and then we all followed him. His matches against George Groves. I believe the Danish fighter that he fought, whose name will come to me. He had a couple of fights with him. Did he have a rubber match? It was who Joe Calzaghe fought. What was the fighter's name? Maybe you should Google that for me. Joe Calzaghe versus, it was a Danish fighter. It's the same fight that Carl Froch fought a couple of times as well. Mikkel Kessler. And I've got a great story to tell you about Mikkel Kessler in a second as well. Against Mikkel Kessler, and Froch put on a tremendous show against Kessler. So a fantastic fighter, Carl Froch. And now we lead into the Super 8. Before I forget, I'll tell you a quick Mikkel Kessler story. My coach, one of my boxing coaches, Kevin Horwood, took me out to meet Joe Calzaghe. It was one of the dinners at the Federation Brew, which is a local venue that holds many boxing events. And he, as I said, he took me to meet Joe Calzaghe. The idea is you went along, you watched some of the fights, you had dinner, and then you lined up to get a photo with Joe Calzaghe. So myself and Kev went and lined up to get a photo with Joe. You would get a photo, we'd just shake your hand, you kind of walk off, and that was fantastic. So as we were lining up to meet him, I was in the front of the queue before Kev. Now, when Joe Calzaghe fought Mikkel Kessler, Kevin Horwood and his friend Paul had both bet against Joe Calzaghe. They both bet on Kessler to win, I think, by knockout or by stoppage. And I put my £10 on the table, betting on, of course, Joe Calzaghe. I was so nervous during that fight that I couldn't even watch it. I'd watch a minute or two, then I'd get up, walk out the room, pace up and down the corridor, look through the crack in the door, and then come back in and watch some of the fight. So Kevin and Paul had bet on Kessler to stop Joe Calzaghe, and I'd bet on Joe Calzaghe to beat and stop Kessler. Joe Calzaghe obviously triumphs. I won my £20. Happy days. So we're queuing up to meet Joe Calzaghe. I'm in front of the queue, so I'll go up to meet Joe. He's, lovely guy, shakes my hand. I say, "Hi, Joe, how you doing? Lovely to meet you. You are legitimately one of my all-time favorite fighters. It's lovely to meet you. You've done so much with your career. How you doing? What a great time." So as he was talking to me, I then said, before I walked away, I just said, "Joe." And he said, "Yes, James, I can't do a Welsh accent, just excuse me." "Cliff, can you throw a Welsh accent in at any time?" "No?" "Okay, brilliant." So he said, "Oh, what is it?" And I goes, "Do you see the guy behind me?" So I pointed to Kev. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "See that guy there?" I goes, "Do you realise he bet against you to lose and to say you were going to get knocked out against Kessler?" And he's like, "Really, did he?" I goes, I goes, I was in the same room, him and his mate, both bet against you, against Mikkel Kessler, and said you'd be knocked out. I says, "What do you think of that?" So he just kind of winked at me, shook my head, I walked off. And of course, Kev could hear what I was saying, so he sheepishly walks up with a bright red face, knowing that I've just told one of the greatest super middleweights in history, an undefeated champion, that this guy was bet against him to be knocked out. So you can imagine Kev's face and trepidation as he walked up to Joe Calzaghe. But I think Joe was fine with him, but I think he ribbed him a little bit for that one. So there you go. Right then. Moving on to the Chris Eubank Jr. story. We have Chris Eubank Jr. competing in the Super 8 tournament. An interesting tournament. It's going to be exclusively on ITV. We're going to have some great fighters on there competing. Chris Eubank Jr., fantastic middleweight. I believe, from what my information tells me, this would actually be held at super middleweight. It's 16 fighters in total, cruiserweights and super middleweights, to compete in 8 quarterfinals in 2 separate divisions. So this is going to be taking place all over the world. It'll be taking place in Riga, in San Antonio, Wembley Arena, and the final, obviously on this point system, I believe. So when you win fights, win, lose or draw, similar to the Super 6, you'll be given points. points, and then the two two finalists will then fight against each other, compete against each other on May 2018. So that'll be quite an interesting event. Also, Groves is billed to fight on this Super 8 tournament as well. So I think these things are great. I mean, they go right back. If you look back to, I think was it the 1980s when, again, correct my information. I don't have the data in front of me. Was it ABC Sports in the US? It had a similar type of tournament with the heavyweights boxing through to the final, and it's great. I think it's great for boxing because the idea is that you bring in the best fighters in that weight division and obviously have them competing against each other to find one winner and one champ. So, the belt situation, the belts come into it. I'm sure in the Super 6 tournament that belts were on the line, but the idea was it was fighter against fighter to find the best fighter at that weight. And as I say, it wasn't about the belts, even though I believe they featured in it, but finding the best fighter at that weight. And the tournament format always goes down so well, with the general public. Going back to the Super 6 tournament, I believe there was a German fighter who opted out of the tournament, and Carl Froch had actually then competed against him and stopped him in 2 or 3 rounds. If you remember the fighter's name, then please tweet that in. So this tournament coming up, this Super 8 tournament, is going to be, I believe, great for boxing. It's going to be on ITV, so perhaps more access to more people to watch and to get into the sport of boxing. And Chris Eubank Jr. will be competing on that, so that'll be an interesting one. I don't know too much about his opponent, but if you do, please feel free to comment and tell us a little bit more about him. Has an undefeated record, I believe. I think he's 16-0. Where is he? This Nice Yildirim.
Big thanks to Gary Bell. He says it all looks good.
Brilliant, Gary Bell. Thank you, sir, for watching. Thank you for your positive comment, and hopefully we're going to have you in the studio. We'll have Gary in with us, perhaps on the next live stream. Potentially we'll have Jamie Bates on with us as well, and we'll be bringing in perhaps David Wield. So the idea is we can bring in fighters, we can bring in promoters, and we can have a bit more of an open discussion. Tonight it's kind of me just holding up the foundations, working the foundations. Bear with us. This is our first live stream. We're just establishing the format of what we're going to be. As I say, lots and lots to work on, lots and lots of different things to look at. Having guests come on, having the combat sports, which is predominantly our focus, talking about other sports, having the coach section. So there's lots and lots that's going to be happening. Chris Eubank Jr. versus Niels Yildirim. So that should be an interesting fight when that happens. Eubank for me is it's interesting because I used to follow around about the time I got into boxing or just before. Chris Eubank Sr. was competing. We had Nigel Benn, and we had McLennan. We had Steve Collins, we had some tremendous. I mean, at that point, the middleweight division, you had Roy Jones who was there. You had so many good middleweight fighters. I'm just thinking a few others that come to mind. So what a great time for boxing in the 80s and 90s. And a favourite heavyweight of mine, who was one of my fantastic. Funny enough, he went into mixed martial arts and he lost against Randy Couture. And he was, a live middleweight. He went up from middleweight to I think went to cruiserweight, and then boxed at James Toney, thank you, and then boxed at heavyweight as well. So having Chris Eubank Jr. on the scene, I think is tremendous for boxing. I'm a big fan. He's fast, he's powerful, he has great movement. He's only has one defeat on his record, which I think has made him created a greater fighter, allowed him to come up a level. No, as I say, there's not a lot out there on this Niels Yildirim. I haven't looked at any of his highlight reel on YouTube. I think the vast majority of people are expecting, I don't want to say an easy win because I don't think any fight's ever easy, but for Chris Eubank Jr. to triumph over this Niels Yildirim as he leads up into the Super 8 tournament. So we have that to look forward to as well. So moving on to our next piece of news. As I go on to my bio, This is, yes.
I've just shared that on the PEEP magazine group on Facebook. So if you look at the Facebook,
No problem. If you,
it's on there.
right, so that's just been shared on our Facebook page. If you just go onto Facebook and just type in PEEP Magazine, that's no problem, PEEP Magazine Group, and you highlight that. The information there is on our stream and feed, rather, our wall, our news feed on Facebook. You can check us out there. Do subscribe onto YouTube. If you're watching this right now, you're already on there. You can also press the little bell that'll be in the corner for the notifications, and all the content that we're putting out there, you'll have early notification of this information, so you can get in there first, watch it, see what you think. Also, if you would like to support us, you can support the channel, which I'll give you more information about very, very soon. Okay.
Cheers, Gary Bell, 100%. You'll definitely be on the next show, he says.
Fantastic. So we have Gary Bell coming on to the next show. We have, as you can see, we've got 2 seats here. 1, 2. So we'll be having special guests coming on to the show over the upcoming weeks and months and years as we build our subscriber base and generate interest and promote rather through the Northeast, combat sports, the arts, and everything in general.
James comes across really bad on camera, okay?
Great. Was that from Gary? Thank you, Gary. No problem. Okay. Well, thanks for the.
He said you come across really
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to having you on. We look forward to having you on. No problem. Okay. No problem. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for that positive comment. Any comments are welcome. Any comments are welcome. So thank you very much, Gary. I hope you're having a good time. I believe you're at a fight show tonight, actually, at the NE6 suite. Is that correct? Yeah, so I hope you're having a good time at that show tonight.
James, his company's Contender Promotions.
No problems. Shout out to Gary Bell's company, Contender Promotions, who I believe will also have a Facebook page. So you can perhaps go onto Facebook and type in Contender Promotions and follow Gary Bell's Contender company on there. Any upcoming events and fighters and news, you'll obviously receive all that. So Cliff winding me up there before, but that hasn't thrown me off. Nothing can throw me off. I think we're into full swing right now. Once again, we're going to talk about this competition, which is you will win. Let's get on to the question. I don't want to make a mistake on this one. There are no mistakes. There's just movement. There's just movement. Right. There's just PEEP. Okay. So the question is, can anybody spot? We might want to get this on camera. Can anybody spot the photographic reference to an iconic event or incident? I think it's probably the best way to phrase it. The only clue that I can give you is it was in 1931. 1931 was when this incident or event happened. We'll call it an iconic photographic reference. So the idea there is that it's an iconic photo image. So it's an image that has been kind of taken, that has a lot of power, a lot of strength, and it's iconic. So it's a well-known image from 1931. And it will be referenced on camera as you're watching live, and the first person to inbox us or to comment with the correct answer will win a PEEP magazine t-shirt and an APN lean protein. And once you give us the correct answer, if you could just inbox or DM us your information, your address, name, and we will send that out to you, no problem whatsoever. Right then, let's get on to our last piece of news, which was personally a bit of a shock for me, because I'm actually a big fan of this guy. My 2 favorite current day boxers are Floyd Mayweather. Now, Floyd Mayweather, we also know, recently retired. He actually retired. Well, he's retired, I think, 3 times in total, with this being the 3rd, is I'm sure his official and final retirement. He retired initially back in 2000, and someone's going to have to tell me, but he only retired for, I believe, 18 months. And then he came back and he fought Manuel Marquez was it, in his first fight. And he absolutely dominated. I mean, for me, it's one of his best ever performances. And Marquez at the time, the same Marquez who went on to knock out Manny Pacquiao. I think him and Pacquiao fought 3 or possibly 4 times, and he knocked Manny Pacquiao out with I think it was a right hook. Tremendously strong fighter, and Floyd Mayweather just kind of ran rings around him, in my opinion, just completely outboxed him, won every round, and that was after his first official retirement. His second retirement, he gave us after he had fought Pacquiao, which I think was his 48th fight. And in his 49th fight, he fought a chap called Berto. Don't remember his first name. Berto had lost to Victor Ortiz. He'd lost to Guerrero, which was another fighter that Mayweather had beaten. So he wasn't considered a tremendously dangerous opponent, although in the All Access, it kind of built him up to be, very fit and strong, etc. Andre Berto. So I think, in my opinion, Floyd Mayweather was allowed to have a kind of a gimme fight, so to speak, for his last fight, his 49th fight. I think of all the pay-per-views, that was probably the lowest pay-per-view he'd ever had, because most people realised that Berto wasn't a threat. And Mayweather did what Mayweather does, which is, in my opinion, tremendous boxing, tremendous skill set, hit and do not get hit. For me personally, that is what boxing is all about, hit and not be hit. The other fighters, not just entitled, but is required to hit you in the face as hard as he possibly can. And if the fighter's not able to do that, that's not the other fighter's fault. The other fighter's job is not to stand there and be hit, but to move, not be hit, and hit the other guy as many times as possible, which is something that Floyd Mayweather does very well, which is why he's an undefeated champion. In my opinion, one of the greatest fighters in history, certainly in the top 20 without even a shadow of the doubt, top 15, maybe touching into the top, I think for me personally, the top 10. So Mayweather had retired after defeating Andre Berto, and then came back, and I think, if anybody knows the viewing figures of I'm right now referring to the Mayweather McGregor fight that had happened, not more than a month ago. I'd like to know the viewing figures. Perhaps that was the most viewed combat event in history. Certainly, generated a lot of controversy, tremendous amount of interest. And Floyd Mayweather came back out of retirement at the age of, was he 40, nearly 41, fought Conor McGregor, who I've also got a lot of respect for. I'm a Conor McGregor fan. I always felt that Mayweather would outbox him, because at the end of the day, it is professional boxing. Absolutely, mixed martial artists are great strikers, but boxing is not their main forte. A boxer boxes, a mixed martial artist will box, he will kick, he will punch, he will elbow, he will knee, he'll wrestle, he has his jiu-jitsu. But it was certainly an interesting event, A lot of people had said, a lot of people I'd spoke to and heard, had talked about how McGregor was so much bigger and so much stronger and such a hard hitter, etc., etc. But the way I looked at it is that Floyd Mayweather in the past had fought bigger opponents. I believe Canelo, maybe not in height, but certainly in weight, was bigger than McGregor. I certainly believe that Canelo, as one example, hit harder than Conor McGregor. You could look at, does Pacquiao hit harder? Does Ricky Hatton hit harder? I don't know, Guerrero, does he hit harder? So Mayweather certainly fought big punching opponents and physically strong and powerful and size-wise opponents. And the thing is, in my opinion, that some people forget is that Floyd Mayweather's got a tremendous chin. He's got a tremendous chin, and he's a very, very tough guy. Because he doesn't get hit as much as as other fighters, and that's to put it mildly. People forget that he does actually get hit, because it is boxing. I don't think there's any fighter in history in any sport that's never been hit once. And Mayweather's been hit. For example, Shane Mosley caught him with a clean right hand, and it certainly wobbled Mayweather. I believe when he threw it, Mayweather kind of grabbed the punching arm and hung on. But he rides these thing out. Zab Judah knocked him down. I think his gloves touched the ground, and Floyd Mayweather's gloves touched the ground. I don't think he was given a count for that, but he has been hit and hurt. He's taken punches. He knows what it's like to get to be punched. So for me, those people who are saying that once McGregor hits him, he's going to go. McGregor certainly caught him clean, and Mayweather rode it out as Mayweather does. Yes. We've been live for 1 hour. Isn't that interesting? You know, I feel like I could go on all night. And at first we were wondering if we'd have enough content to cover the hour. So that's just flown by. So if you're still with us, no problem. There may have been a technical issue right at the start with the sound, but yes, absolutely, I will. I'm going to repeat the start when we first launched because there may have been a technical issue with the sound. So we started off with, hello, we are live. That is what we're going to say. We are live. Welcome to PEEP Magazine. PEEP Magazine, our first live stream on YouTube. My name is James Watling, a former and current professional fighter, athlete, coach, mentor. PEEP Magazine is an online combat subscription channel. You can subscribe to us at YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram, on Twitter. We cover a variety of combat sports such as boxing, mixed martial arts. We cover kickboxing. We go into other areas. We talked a little bit about the arts before. We talked a little bit about film. We talked a little bit about streetwear, about nutrition. We talked about having coaches on. So we're hoping to cover a wide variety of topics with our main through line being the combat sports. I am your host and will be your host for the PEEP Magazine. I also commentate for PEEP and act as an interviewer. We will be bringing guests on, though, to have with us. You can see an empty seat to my left and an empty seat to my right. We will be bringing guests on to discuss a whole variety of topics, as we've said. My brand and my training ethos, Team Alpha, that is a one-to-one training method and system that involves nutrition, strength and conditioning, a variety of martial arts, sports psychology, emotional and attribute development. You are very welcome to follow me on Instagram on Team Alpha 1424 to see some of the types of training and success stories that we've had, helping individuals to become the very best that they can be, not just physically, but also emotionally, spiritually in a sense, psychologically, bring themselves up to their highest levels. And that's Team Alpha. Right then, should we shout out the competition one more time, Cliff, do you think? For the last time? One more time. So, what iconic photographic image was released in 1931, which we'll be referencing now on camera? Send your answers through, and the winner will receive a PEEP Magazine t-shirt and a APN protein powder and any poster that you would like from the wall. We can give you one of our posters, our PEEP Magazine posters, or one of our promotional posters. So, our final bit of news now. I referenced Floyd Mayweather. My other favorite modern day fighter is the great Andre Ward. Andre Ward recently announced his retirement from the sport at age 33. I'm going to be referencing The Guardian on the pad here. So Ward, for me personally, one of my all-time favorite fighters, a tremendous mover. He won a gold medal, which was at light heavyweight in the Olympics. He was a big fan and probably still is of the great Roy Jones. He won a gold medal, as I say, in the Olympics, turned professional, remained undefeated as a professional, a great mover, a great defensive fighter who could punch a little. His record is 32-0 with 16 KOs. Remember that he fought Kovalev, who was a tremendous puncher, Sergey Kovalev, in his last fight, and he actually managed to stop Kovalev with a body shot. It was, in a sense, controversial. Not from my perspective, it was not a controversial stoppage. I watched it not live, I watched it on YouTube, and I thought Andre Ward did a tremendous job. So he announces his retirement at age 33. He has been training for, well, it says here that he has not lost as a pro or amateur since he was 13. We could guess that he perhaps started training in the boxing when he was, 7 or 8 years old. That might be worth a check.
Got a question from Gary.
Yes, of course. Gary, we have a question. Please ask away.
James, what's your thoughts on Remy Bonjaski versus Melvin Manhoff?
Great question, Gary.
WFL World Fighting League, 29th of October.
Great question. It's going to be an interesting one. Manahoff's just so strong. I mean, they're both very strong fighters. Bonjanski, in my opinion, in a sense, he's very unorthodox. He comes with all these kicks and kind of unorthodox moves. Manhoef's, very strong, kind of come forward. They're both tremendous fighters. It's an interesting one. I think for me personally, I'm going to go with Bonjanski. I think I'm going to go with Bonjanski. I don't have the fighters' records in front of me, but my answer to that would be I just think Bonjanski may bring something new to the table in a sense. And I think Manhoef may be feeling a little bit of wear and tear from past fights. So I'm going to go with Bonjanski. And Gary, thank you so much for that question. I'll be interested to know what your opinion on the fight is, and we can obviously read that out live as we stream right now. And perhaps any of the other viewers could give their opinion as well on the Bonjanski versus Manhoef fight that's coming up. What was the date of that? Sorry, Cliff.
That is World Fighting League, 29th of October.
World Fighting League on the 29th of October. So that's certainly worth a little bit of research on for all the viewers out there. If you want to research that fight, Google it, get some information. Perhaps look at the highlight reels of both fighters, of Manhoef and Bonjanski. Have a look at them and come up with an opinion. Let us know what you think. Who do you think is going to win? I'm going to put my stall out and say Bonjanski. I think he'll just bring a little bit more to the table, potentially than Manhoef's seen before. Although Manhoef is also a tremendous fighter, that's my opinion on that. Any more questions from Gary? Thank you so much for sending that in. Please ask away, and we'll certainly include that in tonight's show. Yes, absolutely. I will mention the magazines, and hopefully I will get this right. So if you would like to subscribe to PEEP, you can also go online and look at the PEEP magazine formula, which is online magazines that you can read and gives you a tremendous amount of information on various fights, on various fighters, and photography as well, some of the greatest fight shots out there. So if you'd like to subscribe to PEEP, you can go to the online magazine and you'll have that to look through at your leisure. Fantastic. And once again, can I just mention, as we are doing further shows, covering further shows, live streams such as this, we'll be going out into the community a little bit, doing a little bit on various fighting things throughout the Middle East. When you subscribe, please hit that notification bell in the bottom right-hand corner, which eventually I'll be able to point to. You'll see it on the screen, and you will receive notifications on upcoming streams, as I say, and posts that we're putting out there. So, Andre Ward, at the relatively young age of 33, 20 years in the sport, more than 20 years in the sport. He does say that the reason for his retirement and his last fight, if I'm not mistaken, was against Sergey Kovalev. A tremendous performance for Andre Ward. And I want to say a little bit about his punching power. Sometimes I think people can have the opinion that, unless you've got an 100% knockout ratio, that you're not able to punch, that you're just a pity-pat puncher. But if you look at Floyd Mayweather, and what I would say is for those who think that Floyd Mayweather can't punch, is take a punch off Floyd Mayweather, take a punch off Andre Ward. And it's interesting that he managed to stop Kovalev, who had a tremendous knockout percentage, tremendously strong fighter, and he was stopped by Andre Ward. So he finishes with a 32-0 record, 16 KOs. Again, I'm referencing The Guardian. And this is basically what he says. I'm just going to do a quick quote. He says, "This is Andre Ward." I'm quoting Andre Ward. "I want to be clear. I am leaving because my body can no longer put up with the rigors of the sport, and therefore my desire to fight is no longer there." Ward said in a statement on his website, "If I cannot give my family, my team, and my fans, or the fans, everything I have, then I should no longer be fighting." So it's interesting. I mean, 20 years in the sport, and he says that his body can no longer, keep up with I suppose what his desires are. And Andre Ward's a fighter who, again, I would say a defensive fighter. A fighter who's not reflectively, but practically not getting hit as much. If you were to look at the data, if you had the data in front of you and you look at what percentage throughout all Andre Ward's fight, how many punches he's taken, compared to fighters like, the late great Arturo Gatti, if Gatti had shipped, say, 8% of punches thrown at him, I'm just using this as not as an example, as an idea. I don't have this exact information, but if we were to say that, perhaps Andre Ward had only taken 10% of the punches that had been thrown at him, clean punches, not just block punches. However, perhaps less than that, perhaps 5% clean punches. Perhaps, again, let's throw out a figure. If 10,000 punches have been thrown at Andre Ward, perhaps of those 10,000, he's only taken 50 clean punches on the body or on the chin. It's potentially more thrown and landed, but let's just say that. But the thing is, boxing is a contact sport, Even those 50 punches can be damaging over time. So even for a fighter who's not getting hit very much, it's a damaging sport. And it's not just the competition. It's also the sparring. It's also the training. The punches that you're taking in sparring, even if you're sparring lightly, the amount of trauma you're putting your body through the running, through the swimming. If you're swimming, through the weight training, through the rounds in the gym, on the pads, hitting the heavy bag. It's a demanding sport, and it's a wear and tearing sport. So it's not surprising that even at the young age of 33, certainly in nowadays, 33 is very young. And a fighter who's been in the game for over 20 years, who hasn't taken a lot of punches in comparison, that he would retire due to damage to the sport. Was it Brendan? I think it was Brendan Ingalls, Jim, that I believe had a sign on it that said something like, "Boxing seriously damages your health," and it certainly can. That's not to say though, boxing and the combat arts, kickboxing, mixed martial arts are tremendous sports. I recommend everybody out there to go to their local training gym and to work out, not to compete, not even to spar, but just for the training, because it'll make you a better human being overall. I think we have a question from Apple. Got you. Okay, I'd like to send out a big thanks to Dave from Apple. Has he provided us the Mac to give away in the future? No? I'm just kidding. So Dave from Apple, thank you very much for providing us with some of the equipment for tonight, and we'll give you a shout out. I'm sure in the next episode we'll run off some text on screen to promote your business or yourselves. But we do thank you for your help in making tonight's episode possible. A big thank you to Dave from Apple, and that's Apple, the company Apple, not Apple the fruit. Just to be quite clear. So Yep. I think we have another question from Gary. Just as we're leading up to that, for those viewers out there, I'd like to know your opinion on Andre Ward in regards to his retirement. What was your opinion of him as a fighter? Which one of his fights, did you find the most entertaining to watch, the most competitive potentially? And how do you feel about that in retiring at 33? I'm just getting a list up here of the some of the fighters that he'd beaten, such as Mikhail Kessler, we spoke a little bit before, Alan Green, Sakio Bika, who Joe Kalizaki had fought. It was quite a dirty, certainly I was going to say dirty fight. Cliff started laughing, so we'll go with that. A dirty fight. I think Kalizaki was cut, and in that one he managed to reign triumphant. However, I do remember an earlier fight where Kalizaki had fought I think it was a Middle Eastern fighter, and he ended up being knocked down by him, and that was a bit of a war as well. Anyway, back to Andre Ward's former opponents, Arthur Abraham, we spoke about before, who just fought Chris Eubank Jr., Carl Froch we talked about, and Chad Dawson. And Chad Dawson is one of the fighters who also fought in the Super 6 tournament against Andre Ward. So interesting, very, very interesting. So yeah, a little comment here about how Andre Ward was kind of a yin to Floyd Mayweather's yang. He was a devout Christian with 4 children, married, long-term marriage, and a tremendous ambassador to the sport. Again, for me, one of my favorite fighters of all time, Andre Ward. Perhaps not as well known in this country. Again, because I don't think he'd ever fought over in the UK. I think it would have done him the world of good to come over and fight Carl Froch in the UK. I think that was actually purported at one point, but never actually happened. So that's interesting. We have an off-camera question.
Gary Bell is going with
Manahoff. Right, Gary Bell's gone with Manahoff. Can we ask why?
He's training at Mike's gym in Holland
Fantastic.
at the moment.
Right.
But Remy is a very dangerous fighter. But he says he's got to go with his brother, Melvin.
Right.
No mercy, Manahoff.
Fantastic. So we have Gary Bell going for Melvin No Mercy Manahoff. Interesting. So again, Bajanski versus Manahoff. The gym that he just mentioned there, is that the same gym that Idris Elba opponent had trained in when they had that fight? For those who, again, that's something we should have mentioned. The fighter with Idris Elba, which was kind of a series or some mini documentaries on Sky Sports about the actor Idris Elba, who decided that he wanted to fight, and I'll not spoil it for you, but he trained to have an amateur fight and then a professional fight. And I just wondered if the opponent that he had, whose name doesn't come to me right now, had fought out at the same gym. We'll perhaps do a little piece on that at some point in a future episode, because I have to say, after having watched that, I gained a lot of. I've already had respect for Idris Elba as an actor, but as a competitive human being who is already a very successful actor, and creates wealth through that, riches, and wealth. Then decided that he wanted to fight in his early 40s, something that he wanted to do, and you could see the amount of hard work, dedication, commitment, and pain that he went through. To get to that point, and the amount of pressure on the guy, when he had his professional fight, all his friends and family, all the cameras there, all the attention on him. And anyway, I was tremendously impressed with him. So that's maybe something that's worth checking out. If you haven't already seen The Fighter, if you don't have Sky, I'm sure you'll be able to find it on YouTube or somewhere. But it's definitely worth checking out. Idris Elba on The Fighter. I was really impressed with that.
Can we have a big shout out to Brian Walker from Walker Brothers?
We absolutely can. We're going to have a shout out right now from Brian Walker from Walker Brothers. Thank you very much for being involved and helping to make tonight's stream possible. Fantastic. Thank you for helping to make tonight's episode possible with the studio. So, interesting stuff. This live stream will be brought to you initially. We were initially looking on a monthly basis, so we may go bi-weekly. That's every 2 weeks, very, very soon. I will be hosting the live streams. We will have a variety of guests on over the upcoming months as we build on tonight's, I'm sure, success. We'll be bringing people in to discuss the fighting arts, the combat arts. We'll be bringing on promoters. I would like to, and we will be bringing on various coaches from different sports. I'd like to bring in some success mentors, people who have achieved success not just in sports, perhaps in other areas, in business, perhaps in entertainment. I would like to bring on people who can talk a little bit about psychology, perhaps neuroscience, how the brain works. I think these things are all relevant to what we're doing. I'm excited to have the supplements and nutrition slot. I'm also equally excited to have the streetwear, bringing on some streetwear. And we will certainly be doing, I think I've promised Cliff, who is the Cliff Sainsbury, who is the CEO and founder of PEEP magazine and my co-conspirator. Team Alpha and PEEP are kind of, we're working together to build this channel, to build interest in combat sports in the Northeast. You can follow Team Alpha on Instagram on Team Alpha 1424, and you can follow PEEP Magazine on Instagram, subscribe on YouTube, and you can also find us on Facebook. As I was saying, I promised Cliff a night out. I'm going to take him to see the new Blade Runner movie, Blade Runner 2049. So we may even get a little bit of footage as we go in to see the film, and maybe a little bit of footage afterwards to give you our opinions on what we thought of that. That would be an interesting one. Another chap that we've had on the show in the past, and we'll certainly be having on in the future, and I would like to think that even though we're not covering the event, we'll be able to do some live stream from it, is Lewis Ritson, Lewis the Sandman Ritson, who will be competing for the prestigious Lonsdale belt on the 7th of October, a lightweight Lonsdale belt he will be contesting for. So we will be following that. His opponent, as it comes up to me now, Thank you for quick Wi-Fi. Robbie Barrett. So Robbie Barrett is the current champion, we believe, at lightweight. He's the British champion. Lewis the Sandman Ritson will be competing against him on the 7th of October at Manchester. And the fights are due to start at 6 o'clock. So we'll certainly be bringing Lewis back on the show. And I think what we're going to do is go back to the Baltic and do a small review at the Baltic, kind of a nighttime and midnight review perhaps, and talk to him a little bit about the fight, etc., etc. But we can't really say too much until we have that fight. But we're certainly going to bring him on again, talk to us a little bit about that and what his future plans are. So I think we're coming towards the end of our initial stream. I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen tonight. Any questions or queries that you have, you can, as I say, you're very welcome to get in touch. This was our first night. We've managed to keep the lights on. We've managed to avoid knocking anything over. I've managed to avoid falling off my chair. So we're not doing too badly, I don't think. The electricity is still on. We'll certainly be coming to you again very soon in the future. We're going to have, as I said, we've got guests. We've got a whole variety of different subjects and topics to cover. Also, if there's anything specifically you'd like us to cover in the upcoming streams, then please get in touch with us. You're very welcome to make suggestions, and we'll do our very best to include those in upcoming shows and upcoming streams. So I'd like to say a few thank yous. I'd like to say thank you to, well, first of all, let's say thank you to PEEP Alpha and Team Alpha. I said PEEP Alpha. Team Alpha, maybe that's what we should call it. Team Alpha and PEEP Magazine, which is obviously what we're here for right now. I'd like to say a big thank you to Dave at Apple. I would like to say a big thank you to Gary Bell for contributing to tonight's show. That may be him right now. I'd like to say a big thank you to you for those who've commented and made suggestions on tonight's show. And we'd like to say thank you to the Baltic for having us in there to do some interviews with Lewis. And we'd like to wish Lewis all the best in the future. Linda Archer, so if you're watching right now, which I think you are because I think you've either liked or thrown down a comment, thank you for watching tonight's episode. We'll certainly be having Gary Bell on in a future stream. We'll be having Jamie Bates on to talk to us for a little bit. We're going to have, David Wield. We'd love to get the Northeast and the UK's top promoter in to talk to us a little bit about what he has planned in his upcoming shows. Would like to bring fighters in. Stevie Ibbotson, fantastic local fighter. I'd like to bring him on to talk to us. I'd like to bring some different coaches in. I would love to bring in maybe Tyrone Elliott to talk about his jiu-jitsu coaching, how he got started. I'd like to bring in Barry from Tyne Surf Company to talk a little bit about his business, his surf career, and what he's done as a coach. Tremendous amounts of topics and individuals that we can talk to and bring in and share some of their knowledge with you. I'm just trying to think if anybody else comes to mind. Perhaps we'll bring in my Team Alpha. We'll bring in my Alpha One Fight team. They can talk a little bit about themselves and what they've done and what it's like to be on Team Alpha. Some of their competitive side, their competitive career, what they're doing at the moment, what they've planned, what Team Alpha's done for them, how it's managed to bring them forward. I'd like to bring in some of my guys as well. And absolutely, moving forward, the only way is up. So I think, unless we have anything else further to say, Cliff, do you want me to? I can keep this going all night if you'd like me to, sir. Okay. Yeah, well, what we're going to do is we're going to keep this running for a little bit longer. I've got a few more things that we can discuss. If anybody has any questions or anything that they'd like to have addressed live on air, if you could just send us a message or a comment on Facebook, then we'll receive that pretty much straight away. So I think what will be interesting will be as we canvas around the Northeast, look at some of the local fight gyms. It'll be interesting to look at some of the boxing gyms. It'll be interesting to look at some of the local kickboxing gyms. As I said, I'd like to go over to Stevie Ibbetson's kickboxing, have a look at his gym, talk with him. Even some of the local jiu-jitsu training facilities. I'd like to call into some of those. And also, recently I joined a gym. I'm not sure if we can I say exercise for less? I'm not sure. I joined a local gym at Long Benton, so it would be nice if we could do a little bit of local gym coverage as well, even though, franchises or businesses around the Northeast, and do some gym reviews, which would be very interesting, giving you guys some insight into local gyms. So say, for example, you want to take up boxing, we can suggest some places that you can perhaps go work out and train at. If you just want to get fit, lose some weight, get in shape, improve your health, what local gyms, that are welcoming to you, that you're not going to feel intimidated, that you can go into, you can join for a reasonable price. So things like that, we want to offer you as much as possible on this through PEEP magazine. As I say, we are predominantly combat sports oriented, but that's not only what we cover. We cover a many variety of topics. We are in Newcastle City Centre. Newcastle City Centre will certainly be pushing Newcastle. So many different things to like and to see. We've already mentioned about the Baltic. We'll be doing some filming at Jesmond Dean. We'll be doing some filming at the Baltic. We'll be doing some filming at the a whole selection of different areas, historical areas around Newcastle. So we suggest that you subscribe and keep viewing and see what we've got planned in the future. So,
big shout out Mark Clausel, Vision Health and Fitness.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Mark Clausel at Vision Fitness. We're going to come over and see your gym, sir. That's going to be our first gym review. If you don't mind giving us unrestricted access, that's going to be our first gym review. We're going to go over to Vision Health. What's going to happen is we're going to do a little section called whatever it's going to be called, gym review. But what we're going to do is this. I'm going to go over to different gyms, and Cliff's going to bring the camera. I'm going to train at different gyms. We're going to try out different gym facilities. We're going to go to different fight gyms. I'm going to train, work out. We're going to film that. We're going to put it up there. We're going to show you some footage. We're going to talk a little bit about other people that train there, talk about the people that run it, and just having a bit of opinion on it. And we can try out different martial arts. We can try out different gyms, I've said, different sports. We can get some surfing. We're going to go down and see Barry, get some surfing going on. We're going to film that and just give you guys a benefit of hindsight, really, just talking about if, for example, you are a professional boxer, could learning how to surf, could that benefit you as a professional boxer? We're going to look into that. Anyway, we're gonna shut this down. So I just want to say thank you very much to everybody who's viewed tonight. We really appreciate your feedback. Any questions, please get in touch, and we look forward to coming back to you potentially 2 weeks from today. We'll confirm the date. If you're subscribed, that will be on our Facebook page, so you will find out when we'll be back on air. And we look forward to seeing you soon. This is James Watling at PEEP Magazine. No problem. No problem at all. So send in your answer for the competition and we will get in touch and we will put that together for you. No problem whatsoever. So thank you for viewing us. Hope you have a great evening. Hope you have a great weekend. Take care. Be more alpha. PEEP Magazine. We are out.